Donald Trump made a whole lot of promises that he did not meet, and one would argue broke. Look at Lordstown. He said he was going to...
Don't sell your homes.
Yeah, don't sell your homes. And what happened? It shut down. Outsourcing under Donald Trump. His policies that are about putting, tens to hundreds of % tariffs.
John Deere.
Yes. Yes. So part of the challenge, and I don't disagree that it's a challenge, got to earn the vote of everybody, is reminding people of fact, regardless of what somebody says in a small rally somewhere. Damn! And I think that's really important. And that's part of what I'm doing in this campaign, is to remind people, just like here in Pittsburgh, of the reality of who has stood with union labor, who stands for American manufacturing, who stands for American jobs.
Talk about hitting him where it hurts. This was a masterclass in having just the right amount of shade in an otherwise professional and compelling sit-down interview.
Expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share. And it is not right that the teachers and the firefighters that I meet every day across our country are paying a higher tax than the richest people in our country.
Bill Gates just said it this week. If he was in charge of taxes, he would have paid more. But how do you find that line to make sure corporations are paying their fair share, but they're not leaving our country?
Well, listen, I work with a lot of CEOs. I have spent a lot of time with CEOs, and I'm going to tell you that the business leaders who are actually part of the engine of America's economy agree that people should pay their fair share. They also agree that when we look at a plan such as mine that is about investing in the middle class, investing in new industries, investing in bringing down costs, invest in entrepreneurs like small businesses, that the overall economy is stronger and everyone benefits.
Since Obama's infamous hand gesture during his speech at the DNC and post the debate, Trump has been obsessed with his crowd size.
So we do these rallies. They're massive rallies. Everybody stays till the end, by the way. When she said that, well, your rallies, people leave. Honestly, nobody does. And if I saw them leaving, I'd say, and ladies and gentlemen, make America great again, and I'd get the hell out.
And that obsession and his thinking that somehow his crowds are bigger than Vice President Harris's and that no, people aren't leaving has brought in lots of evidence showing otherwise. The New York Times even did a study comparing photographic evidence of Trump's rallies with Vice President Harris's rallies, and Vice President Harris's rallies were larger. And we see videos over and over showing people leaving while Trump is still speaking. Videos like these.
Karen, thank you, God. Thank you, God. New York, Broome County DA, Paul Battisti. Thank you, Paul.
The fact is, people aren't just leaving Trump's rallies, they're leaving the MAGA movement and Trump himself. The latest national poll conducted by NBC saw Vice President Harris leading Trump 49 to 45%. And in fact, it showed a surge of Democratic enthusiasm. It's an enthusiasm that gets people out to vote. And even more interesting is the fact that they see her as an instrument for change, being able to be both the incumbent vice president and be able to run on the Biden record, which is seen as very successful among Democrats and a lot of undecided voters, and also be an instrument for change is a difficult feat that she's accomplishing. But perhaps the most damaging thing for Trump is that the more people get to know her, the more they like her. A poll was conducted in July before she became the nominee. She had a favorability rating of 32%. After they got to know her, her favorability went up to 48%. which means that the more they see her, the more she gets her message across in interviews and rallies, the more they like her. And she still has time to do that and to build the momentum. And that is a very dangerous thing for Trump.
And now the child tax credit.
The child tax credit?
Yeah. President Trump started it, and then she upped it. She upped it, and the camo hats and the tax on tips, and now crypto.
So, A, that's not true.
Okay.
B, child poverty was cut in half when the Biden-Harris administration implemented the child tax credit, and the Republicans got rid of it. If Tim Walz is as terrible and embarrassing as you guys think he is, why does he have a +7 favorability and J.D. Vance and Trump both have a -13? And Kamala's at +3. What's going on? What's going on with this loser with the clean air filter, right, that people seem to like?
Perhaps the reason why the more people hear from her, the more they like her, is because she tells them what kind of president she plans to be. In her debate, she was specific about her views of foreign policy, tariffs, how to handle our economy, and specifically the economics. For the most part, believe that her plan will do much better to grow our economy than Trump's plan.
Now, by contrast, Donald Trump has no intention of lowering costs for the middle class. In fact, his economic agenda would actually raise prices. And listen, that's not just my opinion. A survey of top economists by the Financial Times and the University of Chicago found that by an overwhelming 70 to 3% margin, my plan would be better for keeping inflation low.
We know where she stands on tariffs. She wants to protect a few critical industries. We know where Donald Trump thinks about tariffs. $350 billion tax again to consumers, half a point hit to GDP, 700,000 jobs at risk. She is telling you, I do think it's important to pay attention to what she's saying. Today, we'll start to continue to codify that. And Andrew, through the campaign from here, you will continue to hear more. And I think she fully appreciates and looks forward to putting a lot more out there than the Republican platform, because she has a very growth-oriented but fiscally responsible perspective that does drive at helping the middle class, that does drive at helping an economic safety net for those who need it, but does it in a way that is paid for.
And she did the same in her recent sit-down interview with MSNBC. She was specific that raising corporate tax rates is essential in order to help the middle class, but that if you make less than $400,000 a year, your taxes will not be increased. She also spoke specifically about how she supports a woman's right to choose. She is clear about the kind of president she will be. And Fox doesn't like that. And they talk about how she's not being specific enough. And that is just like how Trump always does.
Question? Yeah, please. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. David Populars from Spectrum News. I've spoken with some economists about your proposal for tariffs, and they say they don't see how it will not make items cost more in the United States.
Oh, they'll approve it. They'll approve it. And number one, I don't need them. I don't need Congress, but they'll approve it. I'll have the right to impose them myself if they don't.
What is it? 75% of manufacturers have under 20 employees, right? There's like 4,000 companies that have more than 5 manufacturing companies. Donald Trump is trying to come in with a hammer and say, you're the nail. I'm going to hit you with a 200% tariff, John Deere. Kamala Harris is saying, I'm going to give you incentives to manufacture more. Which do you think is going to work better with companies? Do you want to be underneath a hammer? Because when you put a 200% tariff on John Deere and only a 10 or 20% tariff on their Chinese competitors, their Chinese competitors are now less expensive than John Deere. And it's not so easy. We saw what happened with Carrier, right? When in 2016 they said, if you move down, we're going to tax you more, 35% tariff back then. And what Carrier did, they gamed the system. Right? They just fired different employees.
He does the thing and blames somebody else for it because it's actually Trump that is very vague and always uses a teleprompter. We know that because when he doesn't use his teleprompter, he's even worse. In Las Vegas, when his teleprompter broke, he went off script and was rambling even more than normal. At the RNC, he began his speech talking about unity, which evidently was supposed to be the theme, and then went off the teleprompter and went into this long, rambling 90-minute speech where delegates, the RNC delegates, which are like their die-hard supporters, were leaving during, because when he's not using the teleprompter, he's even worse than normal.
It's not too much to ask Kamala, say, are you for a Palestinian state if Hamas is going to run that state?
Okay.
Yes or no?
And let's say you don't like her answer. Are you going to vote for Donald Trump?
No, I'm not.
Kamala
I just said I'm not going to vote for her.
Harris is not running for perfect. She's running against Trump. We have two choices. And so there are some things you might not know her answer to. And in 2024, unlike 2016 for a lot of the American people, we know exactly what Trump will do, who he is, and the kind of threat he is to democracy.
I don't know.
So it's unclear to me how there could be an informed...
The problem that a lot of people have with Kamala is we don't know her answer to anything, okay?
But you know his answer to everything.
And that's why I would never vote for him, and people should vote for him. But people also are expected to have some idea of what the program is of the person you're supposed to vote for. You're just not supposed to say, well, you have to vote for Y because X is this, that, and the other. Let's find out a little bit more. And I don't think it's a lot to ask her to sit down for a real interview as opposed to a puff piece in which she describes like her feelings of growing up in Oakland with nice lawns.
Then I would just say to that, when you move to Nirvana, give me your real estate broker's number and I'll be your next door neighbor. We don't live there.
That really is. And I like Brett, and I like Bill Maher said, he's a fan of what he reads, but I don't know what universe he lives in. He actually said, we don't know her answer to anything.
That's just
false.
Not true.
It's just false. He obviously hasn't been watching the campaign. And again, I know you're going to get into this, but compare what she said. And again, we can go through the issues with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Whether it's that rambling answer on child care, whether it was the nonsensical answers during the debate. And by the way, she wants to debate again. Donald Trump doesn't, because he doesn't talk about the issues. He can't talk about the issues. But again, there's this false equivalency from the anti-Trump crowd and also from the mainstream media.
She served as a senator, as a prosecutor, as an attorney general, and the vice president. She also has a record.
She has
something you can compare to Trump.
No wonder that people are flocking to Vice President Harris's rallies. They're filled with joy, and her interviews are filled with the message of what she plans to do with this country. The more they hear it, the more they want to vote for her. Whereas Trump, his interviews, his rallies are kind of filled with like three main obsessive talking points. One, his crowd size. It really bothers him that he doesn't get as big of crowds as Vice President Harris. Two, whether or not she worked at McDonald's. It also really bothers him that she understands what it's like to earn a paycheck from McDonald's, like a lot of Americans in this country earning a similar paycheck from someplace else or McDonald's. And three, this slanderous statement about Haitians, immigrants eating pets. He can't let it go. It is the same thing that he's done since 2016 and the whole birtherism before that. Has he added to his coalition or has he lost his coalition? One of his main things was trying to fearmonger people. You know, if somebody is different than us, then we should be afraid of them, and trying to amass power by trying to get the racist beliefs among us to vote for him. So polls are showing that this is not working for him, but it will be voters who decide in November once and for all, if this message that Trump is putting out, it's really clear what his message is something that Americans want in their next president.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.